August 18th, alone in Radford. I didn't have any idea what Radford had in store for me, or what was around the next corner, but I didn't care. I was 18 years old. I didn't care about anything. My dad had just dropped me off in my new home, bumfuck Egypt, USA. I was a young kid with a wad of cash, in the middle of nowhere, ready for any adventure that came my way. This inevitably could only lead to one possible outcome: a good time. Being on my own in Radford was so alien and new. I was both excited and scared at the same time, not knowing what to expect. The best part about being a freshman was that all of my peers were in the same situation. All of us were new kids at the school, young, dumb, and ignorant. We were all ignorant of the fact that we didn't know too much about life, love, or responsibility. Making poor choices as a freshman carried a lot of harsh consequences that I wasn't ready for. From the location my dad chose to drop me off, I assumed that I needed to start my new journey with a haircut. I pulled up my big boy socks and walked into the little Italian barber shop. The barber tried talking to me, but I gave short answers. I was trying to gather my thoughts. I was alone. I was going to be my own man now. There was no dad around to save me. He had just given me my severance package, and we were done. A nice severance package for someone that age. I knew that I could call him if I needed to, but the leash just got a little longer. During the haircut, I couldn't stop my overly excited mind from racing. I thought about my gorgeous girlfriend back home. Then I started thinking about the new person I could become, the new friends I was going to make, and the quarter-pound of pot I had in my dorm room. There was so much that I could develop here. I wasn't just thinking about my education, although that was on the docket. I was thinking about the people I could befriend, which would help add to my life's experiences. I couldn't wait to interact with other students on a cerebral level, with both sides each challenging one another's ideas and beliefs. I wanted my ideas to be challenged and negotiated. When my mind finally stopped spinning, my haircut was done. Now I was terrified. The first steps out of that barber shop were the first steps towards a new me. There I was, walking down Radford's Main Street, $20 short of $300. I felt like I tipped too much, $8 on $12. I was already off to a bad start at budgeting. It was sunny, and the fresh mountain air was not something I was used to breathing in. Mountains surrounded the town, and their ridges could be seen from almost everywhere. They were beautiful. I was in a cluster of mountains surrounded by old houses and an amazing-looking campus. With my money already burning a hole in my pocket, I had the urge to stop at Subway on the corner of Main Street. I managed to resist its temptations for a moment. I asked myself, why would I spend valuable partying and drug supply money on something I had a meal card for? A few minutes later, I was contemplating this as I walked up the steep hill to Muse with my Philly cheesesteak sub in hand. I had no self-control. I hated walking up the steep hills already. I figured my quads were going to be diesel by the time I graduated. While I was waiting to cross the road at the top of the hill, I took notice of 4 girls swinging on a deck swing of a large yellow house. The house was on the corner of the street and the first of off-campus housing. It looked like some sort of sorority house, but had no definitive markers or symbols on it. The staircase that led to the deck was long and tall, a masterpiece of cement. The stairs looked like they were the final destination of many drunken tumbles off the massive deck they led to. On the deck laid many chairs, an entrance to the 3-story house, and a large deck swing that sat 4 very pretty girls. They were all staring directly at me. I stared back at them with a mouthful of sub. It was a new day, and I had to make myself known. I meant to casually say, "Hey!" but I got too excited and shouted it at them. I waved with a smile on my face, barely containing the sub that filled my cheeks. They all giggled at me. 2 of the girls began talking to one another. One waved, and the ugliest gave me an evil look. I felt great. I was in a new place, and already people were taking notice. The campus was full of young, excited people just like me that were looking to have a great time with one another. When I got back to the dorm, I realized that perhaps people were taking notice because I was 6'7" and had such long hair that desperately needed to be shaved. I walked to my room, taking the longest possible route through the dorms. I stopped on every floor along the way to scope out the women. When I got to my room, I began unpacking. I had the door open when in walked my roommate, with what seemed like his entire family. I was vastly outnumbered. He didn't even introduce himself, I suspect due to a lack of confidence or social skills. I spearheaded the awkward introduction and laid some southern gentleman hospitality on them. His name was Ethan. His family was comprised of midgets, and I thought it was a prank. For a moment, I thought my dorm room was becoming overrun by dwarves. Not one specific thing bothered me about my new roommate. Everything bothered me about him. I knew him and I weren't going to click, socially or intellectually. He was a farm boy, and I was a beach bum. Something about him rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't that he stood no taller than 5'5". It was that he was very reserved with things he said. Everything he chose to say reflected his belief that he was better than every person around him. Even though I didn't like the kid off the bat, I still helped him. His family and I grabbed things from their vehicle and carried it to the room. I was slightly bitter that I had carried almost everything up to my room by myself, and this kid had his entire family tree, plus a giant helping him. He took forever to set up his bed with his dad. He used long posts under it so he could set it up like a bunk bed, with his desk underneath of it. He was a short guy climbing into his little bird's nest. It was like I had a kid in my room that lived in a goddamn treehouse in the corner. While they unpacked, they practically interrogated me. They were trying to get a good read on my character, and it seemed like they didn't like me. Frankly, I knew I was going to be doing my own thing in the room, whether my roommate and I were friends or not. Being friends would just make life easier. If I wanted to smoke pot, fuck girls, or go as far as shooting up heroin, I was going to do it. Ethan's parents were beyond controlling and overbearing. They hovered over him the entire time that he unpacked. I thought they were never going to leave. It was more than 2 hours before they started to make tracks. They stayed until the very last box was put away. I just wanted a roommate that would do fun things with me. I wanted to create college stories with a good group of people. I also wanted to make friends I could count on and would always have my back. I was a small fish in a big pond. After having to listen to them for all that time, they finally said they were going to dinner. They didn't invite me, nor did they imply that they wanted me to come. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be insulted or glad. I started playing video games on my computer and just ignored them as they left to eat. When they left, I reflected on what a great father I had. He knew that it was time to let the bird fly, even though I had been soaring for years before college, and that sticking around for too long to help me unpack was not cool. Ethan's parents, on the other hand, were far too overprotective to let their little chickadee go. This explained their interrogation of me and their isolationist dinner. They couldn't just say goodbye. What I remember most about that day is how bad I wanted to smoke weed and that I had no place to do it. I didn't know of any safe haven where a freshman could walk and smoke weed in the town. I waited for Ethan to come back, parent-free, before leaving to engage in my recreational activities. When he came back, I was finally able to ask him if he was cool with smoking weed. I showed him that I had a few ounces of pot with me. He asked what I needed so much for, and I explained that I didn't want to be buying weed from strangers in Radford. He understood my reasoning, because it was true, but he wondered why I needed so much. I told him that I got a discount if I bought more, like Costco or Sam's Club. He laughed and said, "Yeah, I'm cool with it." I grabbed my one-hitter, some weed, and we set off on our journey. We walked around for a little bit, looking for a good place that we could smoke. The row houses on each street gave too much visibility to anywhere we tried to blaze. We eventually walked up the tallest hill we could find, behind some apartments, and smoked. 2 girls shouted at us from one of the apartment patios. "Why aren't you smoking in your house?" "We live in the dorms." They called us stupid freshmen, but we were high, so we didn't feel belittled. While we walked back to the dorms, I tried talking to Ethan to see if we had anything in common. I could tell that we were not going to be doing a whole lot of partying together in our near future. He just wasn't cool or interesting enough to me. I didn't want to spend the time getting to know and befriend him. When we got back to the dorms, I decided I needed to start meeting new people